Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome to episode number 144 of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. I'm your host, Catherine Erdley, as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club. Why not head over to resilientretailclub.com to find out more? And if you use the code 10podcast, that's 10podcast, you can get £10 off your first month in the club. This week, I'm going to start just like I did last week by reading out a review from Tame Your Tiger. As you know, my first book, Tame Your Tiger, How to Stop Your Product Business Eating You Alive, was released in February, and I have had so many lovely comments from so many people who've read it. People have even been gifted it for their birthdays, which is very, very touching. And I would love to encourage you, if you have read the book and enjoyed it, then please head over to amazon.co.uk to write a review. You don't have to have bought it from Amazon to write your review. You can leave one if you have an Amazon account, and unfortunately the other platforms don't really have reviews. So it would make a huge difference to me if you were able to leave me a review. So this week's is from Dottie Red, and she says, how many books have I read on small business? Too many. All saying the same. This is different. This offers different levels and new insights. Loved it and putting the advice into practice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dottie. I really appreciate your review. Why not head over to Amazon and add your own? If you've listened to the book, I'd love to hear your thoughts. On to today's topic. So today I wanted to talk to you about the next big occasion coming up after, of course, the Jubilee and everything else. And that is Father's Day. Father's Day is happening on Sunday, June the 18th. And I wanted to share with you some of my thoughts about ways that you could really make the most of Father's Day in your business. Father's Day in the UK, spending is around £951 million. This is lower than Mother's Day. But it's really interesting. I was diving into some stats around Father's Day in preparation for today's episode. And I think it's fair to say that on average, people spend the same or slightly more on their Father's Day gifts than they do on Mother's Day gifts. And that's because some of the categories that I'm going to go into a little bit later that are really popular in Father's Day, they are slightly higher price categories. Overall, as an entire occasion, Father's Day actually is lower spend than Mother's Day. Take from that what you will. And it is a major event in both hospitality as well as retail. So that 951 million is just the retail spend. But as we'll talk about a little bit later, meals and eating out around Father's Day is also really super important. So how do you make the most of it in your business? Now, some of you may just think, right, okay, this just isn't for me. There are definitely going to be product areas and product businesses that are not going to be particularly well suited to Father's Day, especially if you have products that are really heavily, predominantly aimed at women. However, I still want to run through some ideas for you, because if you're sort of on that middle tier, if you like, you're not really sure if you can make it work or not, then hopefully I will give you some ideas. And if you do sell products for men, I hope you go out there and make the most of it, because it's interesting. Some of the articles that I was reading were lamenting that the choices and the options out there for Father's Day in terms of special novelty items and themed items just seems to be much lower than it is on Mother's Day. So if you do have items specifically for dads, this is really the time to be shouting about it. So this is an extremely broad brush statement, and I'm going to completely recognize that this has a lot of cliches in it. But one thing that I found really interesting, one thing that somebody told me a couple of years ago, which I found extremely helpful in my own personal life, my own gift giving, is that whereas women like to purchase, and again, I totally recognize this is extreme simplification here. So there are definitely women who fit into different categories and men and vice versa. But very, very broadly speaking, from a top line perspective, women tend to prefer items that are luxuries, that are pampering, and men like to have items that are upgrades of things that they already own, which is why things like socks, which people often think, oh, socks, or is that a really great gift? But for a lot of men, that is something that they really like because really nice socks are great. Nice wallet, hat, sunglasses, whatever that might be. So very broadly speaking, if you're thinking about the differences between Mother's Day and Father's Day, then it can also be summed up as Mother's Day tends to be indulgence gifts, whereas Father's Day typically can be practical and traditional. But I don't think it always has to fall exactly into those categories. They tend to be more functional gifts on average. But again, I think that there's definitely lots of nuances in there, and it's certainly not true of all men. And I think that it's worth going through the different categories and thinking about how it might work for your business. So the first thing I want to talk about is clothing. Going back to that theory about men like upgrades, if you sell anything for men, then this should be an absolute shoe-in. You should be able to very quickly talk about the real super giftable clothing items, hats, sunglasses, ties, if the father in that person's life wears ties, socks for sure, underwear, pajamas, all of those sorts of things are absolutely fair game when it comes to Father's Day. But I think just in the same way that with Mother's Day, there's an element of also talking about kind of dressing up for special meals. I definitely think that could work very well for men as well. So if you sell any men's clothing about, then definitely putting together something about what you could wear on Father's Day or gift on Father's Day. So typically with clothing, you're probably well aware of this if you sell clothing, but the more fit critical it is, the more difficult it is to gift. So things like trousers, jackets are typically harder. I'm talking specifically about tailored jackets, but things like jumpers, t-shirts, absolutely fair game. So again, if you are a t-shirt brand, sweatshirt brand, then again for Father's Day, you can make a big stink about this as much as possible. So think clothing, think both upgrades to existing basics, but also something to wear on the special day. I also think that, one of those things, twinning is particularly for parents with young children. So, for example, many years ago, I gave my husband a t-shirt that had said pint on it with the pint logo, the crown logo that you see on pint glasses. And then the children got matching t-shirts that said half pint, which I thought at the time was very funny. But anyway, so thinking about, especially if you have kids wear and menswear, think about, can you put together some kind of matching? That could be an option. Again, all of these suggestions will be very much dependent on your audience. If you listen to my suggestion and you think that would never work for me, then that's absolutely fine. But what I'd love for this podcast to do is really to encourage you to sit down and think about your business and what you could do. Number 2 on the top categories, alcohol. Again, if you are a business that sells alcohol, then I would go for it with Father's Day. Gifting options, gifting ideas, whether it's glass and alcohol or a selection pack, gift box, whatever it is, make sure that you've got them and that you're shouting about them. The next category then would be food. I think consumables, so anytime you give someone a gift that will disappear once they've eaten it, I think that's a real winner for a lot of people. So I definitely recommend going for it if you sell food, that you're making sure that you're thinking about gift boxes, gift packs, whatever that is, but definitely thinking about a way of packaging that up. Someone could purchase it for a Father's Day gift. Food and alcohol are generally speaking pretty safe bets. The 4th category is electronics. This is actually, if you look at the best-selling products lists when you see Father's Day recaps, very often I see it's heavily dominated by electronics. Probably some of that is this whole theory about upgrades, things they find useful. So again, if you're somebody who sells electronics, things especially like headphones, all kinds of sort of small electronics. But that's actually the reason, going back to what I said at the very beginning about how Father's Day gifts in general, people spend a bit more on average, even though the overall event is lower. The other thing that I want to talk about, the other category that I want to talk about is home. And I think that if you have got a home business, or you sell homewares or lifestyle, then I definitely think you should be considering how that could work for Father's Day. So going back to some of the research that I was doing, talked about around 25% of people said that they were going to eat out. About 24% of people said that they would have a meal at home. And interestingly, about 24 people specifically said that they were going to have a barbecue. So outdoor dining, that could be a real winner for Father's Day. What's your Father's Day meal going to look like? Are they going to be in the garden? Is it going to be a barbecue? Do you have platters or serving dishes? Do you have items to decorate outside? Again, could be tableware, it could be table settings. Absolutely 100% for sure. If you sell specialty food, for example, gifted food, then a kit for Dad's Father's Day is an absolute no-brainer. So definitely think about Father's Day and how that could work in terms of what people need for their houses. Going back to this idea of people having special meals, if you sell women's clothing, you could still give it a go with Father's Day. Talk about you having a special Father's Day meal. Here's an outfit, great outfit for entertaining outdoors. Who knows? Something like that. That could still be an option. That could still be an angle. So I think if you are women's, then yes, it's harder to participate in Father's Day, but there is possibly a small in. Then entertaining is another option. Something else which kind of goes against the grain, but I think is growing in popularity, is the pampering side of things. If you sell candles, do you have something that could be unisex or male fragrance? Do you sell men's grooming products or products that are unisex that could be appealing to men? There are all different things that are becoming more common than previously, whereas before you would have said, okay, it's got to be absolutely 100% practical gifts for Father's Day. I think there's definitely a way of spinning it, that it's about pampering, that it's about luxury, that it's about something special for people spoiling their fathers or partners on Father's Day. So definitely, if you're somebody who has products, as I said, that pampering piece could be really, really important. And then I think just practical stuff, if you're somebody who sells, for example, zero waste products, could that be something that you could put together for a Father's Day gift? Or, people who are environmentally conscious and they maybe want to have a plastic-free starter pack, for example, for Father's Day. So I definitely think if you're somebody who sells things that are a bit more practical, then absolutely go for it. The same goes for example, another idea would be small leather goods. That's another one that's an absolute classic for Father's Day. So that would be wallets, coin purses, money clips. The other thing as well, if you're somebody who has jewellery, but perhaps if you have some cufflinks, for example. So it's really just thinking about what have you got that's giftable. It's interesting, if you have a really, really strongly female customer base, it may be worth trying something super small. Like if you've never sold Father's Day before and it is a bit of a departure. So going back to this idea about cufflinks, for example, if you're a jewellery brand and you've never tried cufflinks, I would start really, really small and try and, just try it. Maybe just buy a few, maybe just buy so few that it's just an experiment. It's just something to try, because it would be a great extra string to your bow to be able to add Father's Day in to a customer that otherwise is not available to you. And the truth is that if you have got a very big, strong female audience, then the chances are they're the ones doing the buying anyway. So it may not be as outlandish as it may sound to add something in. Just be aware, sometimes it sounds like it shouldn't really matter, but it's sometimes it's just really interesting is how strongly associated you are with female products. And by that I mean, or the example that I'd like to give is that it's quite interesting. When I worked in the States, I worked for a company called Talbots. Talbots is about a $2.2 billion company, or it was when I worked there. And they were a women's wear company. They'd had women's wear for a long time. They'd been going, it was quite a well-established company and it was very well known. It was kind of the equivalent of somebody, I always say it's like a bit like Hobbs in the women's wear clothing company in terms of the level that it was at and the sort of age range that it was aimed at. But it had a very long history as being a women's brand. And they introduced kids, and that was really successful. And then they introduced men's, and the products were absolutely beautiful. I mean, it was really it wasn't luxury, but it was like high-end high street. And the products that they brought in for the men's range were absolutely beautiful. But the biggest thing that they struggled with is that men being prepared to, say, walk out of a store holding a Talbot's Men's bag or tell people that they were bought from Talbot's Men's, because it was such a heavy association of it being a brand for women. So that would be my only caveat. If you are somebody who has a really, really strong female following, do you want your branding all over the men's offer? If you do decide to try men's offer, or maybe that's fine. Maybe nobody really cares. It's not quite the same thing as when it's on a smaller scale, but it could be an interesting thing to try if you've never had a male option. I personally think that the whole marketplace for small business male-centric goods is much less crowded than the ones for women, because I think a lot of people who start small creative businesses are women, and a lot of people start businesses kind of creating products that they like. So it would be an interesting thing to try. You may disagree with me. If you are a small business that caters mostly to men, I'd love to hear if you disagree with me. But I think generally speaking, it's less competitive, and it just might be worth giving it a really small go. Just try something for Father's Day. Why not? And then the final option to think about would be gift cards. So gift cards is much higher. Gift card purchases are much higher on Father's Day than they are on Mother's Day in general. It's quite funny, which I think probably reflects the fact that a lot of men like to shop for themselves. Why not offer, especially if you have what you might call gender neutral, so your products could work appealing to either men or women, or if you have products specifically for men, I would definitely go for it and really push the options for gift cards, because that's going to be a really major part of people's gift purchasing thought process. So there you go, a quick run through Father's Day. We talked about clothing, both practical basics as well as something special to wear. I even suggested that if you have women's clothing, you could possibly potentially talk about, do you want something, talking about the Father's Day occasion and if they're going to buy something for themselves. Certainly alcohol, and I would definitely say also food, specifically food as it relates to outdoor grilling, barbecuing. Electronics is key. Pampering items also growing in popularity. Practical items still going strong, so do think about that if you're somebody who maybe doesn't typically think of themselves as gifting. Small leather goods and other men's accessories, also a really key category. Gift cards is important as well. And then other than that, my other tips would be, as usual, as we're going into the run up to Father's Day, have a look at what other people are doing. Get yourself an inspiration file so that as you go forward, if you are looking for ideas, maybe next year, you've got some really great ideas, or a swipe file where you have picked out a few things that you thought could be really good for you maybe next year. So lots to think about, and good luck. As I said, coming up on Sunday the 18th of June. So this may feel premature, but actually by the time you've planned it all out, especially if you've done photography, if you've had a go at creating some email campaigns or some social media campaigns around Father's Day, then it will come up quicker than you think. Why not head over to Instagram at Resilient Retail Club? Let me know what you thought about today's episode. Let me know if you've got any plans to do anything specific on Father's Day. And of course, if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast in iTunes, it makes such a big difference. It allows me to get the podcast out there to more people. And of course, if you follow or subscribe, you'll be the first to know about every new episode. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions, or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.